Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Backlot Banter. My name is Tucker Hazel. Today, I am joined by my absolutely god-awful co-host, Tanner Dykstra. And today, we're here to talk about Wicked.
Come on, man. Hey, come on, man.
I gotta keep you on your toes. Wicked is now out. This is one of the big movies of this year, and we are here to tell you our thoughts about it. But, of course, if you have seen this movie and want to talk to us about it, you can join our Discord, which has a link in the description. And you can also leave a comment letting us know your thoughts in the comment section, and subscribe to the channel for more movie reviews like this. But, Tanner,
Yes.
hold my hands,
Okay.
tickle my fingers together, tell me about Wicked.
Tucker, Wicked is a musical of which to some degree I am inclined to enjoy
Yeah.
a musical. I was well familiar with the songs and the story of Wicked going into it. I am a reformed theater kid in many ways, but in high school, Wicked had a stranglehold over the musical theater kid community during that time. So I was well versed in it. And this is obviously something that was pending for a long time. Many people trying in and out of the roles of Elphaba and Glinda. But for the final product that we got, which is to say the first part of Wicked as a film adaptation.
The official title is Wicked Part 1?
The
Like, will I be putting the title of the video? Should I have said that up front?
No, I think that broadly in marketing it is just Wicked, much like Dune was just Dune.
Sure. Yeah.
But you know they had to trick people because apparently audiences are allergic to like part 1, part 2 in marketing now.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's a weird development as of late. But anyway, Tucker, Wicked's pretty good, I think. I don't know, it didn't make a lot of an impression on me. I have honestly more complaints or critiques than I do like thumbs up or pros about this film. But honestly, I think it's fairly fun as like a crowd pleasing like holiday epic as it is, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely feels big in scope, big in production, lots of big sets, lots of extras, lots of costume design. This is an impressive film from most of the technical regards, and I think that I can't say that I love this movie, but I think I might come down the opposite side of you, where I don't feel like there's many things I will like explicitly criticize about this. I think it's well made. I think the performances are good. There's good choreography in these dance numbers. It's a personal taste thing where I'm watching this movie and I'm watching these dance sequences and I'm listening to these songs. I'm like, man, this is not the kind of thing I'm into.
Yeah.
And that's to say that this is going for its target audience, and it's going for the people that are familiar with the pre-existing musical Wicked, that are into seeing these big. It's kind of a throwback to a big spectacle musical thing.
In a way.
We don't get almost at all anymore, to be honest. And so I certainly respect it from that regard. And they didn't cheap out on this. Like, this is the full horse. But to speak to my personal distaste from it, there's just a lot of moments where the characters are like speaking very grandiloquently and like they're like gesturing bigly, and the set design and things, and it's like it feels fake to me, and that's the thing that really like turns me away from it. Is I have a hard time getting invested in the personal journeys of the characters when I don't feel like they feel like real people.
It is the terminology or the term that really came to mind while I was watching it. It is like sugary sweet as a movie. It is saccharine to a T, even though there's no T in that word. But I digress. But like it is so uncynical about everything, and it is so like pouring its heart out, and you know people have sort of pointed to this in like Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande in the marketing for this are very like, it was a great time to be, and I love my co-stars so much, and John M. Chu is so incredible as a director. Like there's not a lot of like I don't know, there's it's to a point where like it gives you a toothache a little bit in terms of how sugary sweet it is.
That, yeah.
Even though that's not necessarily one of my large problems with it, I'm just kind of used to that as like the tone of Wicked, that it's like a little bit tongue-in-cheek but mostly very genuine about what it is about, which is, you know, that people will turn on people who are other than them, and like standing up against injustice is the right thing to do. Like, it's these very easy sentimental lessons that are being conveyed to you in Wicked, of which, we only get like the first part of it. But I mean, one of the very first opening lines of the film, it's in the marketing, is, are people born wicked, or is wickedness thrust upon them? And I'm like, gee, I wonder which answer this film will come to. But I don't know. That's sort of like an umbrella over the entire film, and obviously that's not seeming to bother a lot of people. Honestly, it seems like a lot of people are looking for that kind of sweet, sugary escape from the modern day, and this is a good film to do that for.
And it's also certainly one of the only examples of that, like to this level in recent times. A lot more big movies nowadays, unless it's like more explicitly a kids movie, are pretty cynical about the world and about their characters and about the fact that things aren't great. I mean, even to something like Barbie, which was a smash hit last year, it does have this sort of cynical edge to it where they're talking about corporate things, and the movie ends with Barbie going to the gynecologist. Like, there is that edge to it, which I think I prefer, just as like someone with a modern film sensibility. But I think it will strike audiences because it does feel different from what a lot of major filmmaking has been recently. But one thing I do want to posit as this is not a criticism from the get-go, is it doesn't bother me that this is only a part one. I went in knowing it. I think that the final act and the climax that it has is a perfectly fine way to end things off. It ends with big fireworks and explosions and like a transcendental song, and I'm like, that's a fine place to end your movie. So I am not going to criticize the movie like, man, we didn't get the ending to these characters' arcs, because I'm like, yeah, I'll see it in a year. Like, it's not that big a deal. And I do think that for what it is, this feels like a complete but to be continued story.
Yes, and I'll say the same. I'll echo the same thing. It doesn't bother me. I'm not like, well, this is an incomplete movie, so my score will reflect that. I think that as an intelligent moviegoer and as intelligent moviegoers and reviewers, we should be like, well, obviously that is inbuilt into this film. That is not a mistake on the filmmaker's part. If anything, it's a pretty savvy move, because from what I know about Wicked, the second act, or part two, what will be the second film in this series, is not as well revered. It is not as memorable, and will probably not be as well liked as audiences, I would assume.
Unless they
a lot of the big songs that people know from Wicked are in this first half. So, and a lot of the originality of like crafting the stories in this is in this first half. Act 2 overlaps a lot with like the Wizard of Oz, the story of the Wizard of Oz.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But let's talk about this, Tucker. Let's talk about our performances. Elphaba, Glinda, Cynthia Erivo, Ariana Grande. This is the first time that both of these actors are getting like a huge stage. In the filmic world. Obviously, Ariana Grande is a world famous pop star, but like Cynthia Erivo has kind of been on the outskirts a little bit. She's gotten an Oscar nomination here or there, but never really won to be in a blockbuster. And what do you think of her performance in this as Elphaba?
I think she's really good, and I think that I like that this film gives her a chance to be very subtle. And not that her previous performances haven't, but I wasn't necessarily expecting that out of this big, colorful musical film. The central protagonist of the movie, though this is certainly a dual protagonist film, the central protagonist, being Elphaba, is a very quiet and reserved person. And her reactions to things are mostly her being either rather stern or looking like mildly concerned at things. And it was just a totally different take than what I'm used to seeing from musicals. And I think that Cynthia Erivo does that really, really well. And my favorite part of her performance is when she's trying to keep her emotions from showing like at all. That you can see in the small facial muscular moments where like she has like kind of like a half crooked smile to things. And she's like trying not to laugh at things or trying not to be too outwardly upset about things. And I'm like, that's good characterization, that she's like holding all of this back. And of course, by the end of the film, once things have sort of ramped up, she's able to have that unleashed. But I really do prefer the first, I guess, 2/3 of this movie from her performances, to where she's just kind of keeping it reined in, but I get a lot of characterization out of small reaction moments from her.
Yeah, I mean, even negative reviews of this film have been extremely complimentary of these two lead performances, as they should be. I think they are very good, and they carry this movie on their backs, and despite this film's, as we already talked about, maybe unsubtlety about its tone or its message, there's a lot of subtlety or a lot of, interior moments for these two characters, I think. Something that is obviously unique to film adaptations of musicals especially. On the stage, you have to be big. You don't have a lot of time for your subtle facial acting moments because 95% of the audience can't see that. So why would you be doing that? But here you have the format to do that, and so I think they picked, especially in Cynthia Erivo, a good performer to convey all of that, to convey like the mounds and years of expectation and hate and anxiety that has been like lumped upon Elphaba as a character, and how she is by happen circumstance able to break out of that and like perhaps given an avenue to become normal is ultimately what she wants. I mean, they're not subtle about her characterization or her arc or her wants, as musicals often aren't, because there's a staple of them, and it's in this song with in this musical with the Wizard and I, of like the I want song. She wants to find some place where she can belong and hopefully, stop being green and fit in a little bit more, and get rid of all these expectations, preconceived notions about her. And that's all in Erivo's performance, and obviously she's a incredible vocal performer as well. So like she never drops the ball with any of these songs either.
Yeah, no, I've got no complaints, and I guess only compliments for her characterization, and I think that she is what kept me grounded. I mentioned up top that this movie does feel kind of fake to me. In some of its editing choices, some of its scripting choices, but in terms of performance, especially from Erivo, I'm grounded in her world, which is kind of a push and pull for this movie for me, where I'm like, okay, I want to connect to Elphaba and her struggle and her personality and the way that she's approaching interacting with people, because it's an interesting story to tell, and it is kind of I guess people say like Rogue One problem, where it's like, okay, you know where this is going to end up, but I still think that the journey is interesting to see, and it's an interesting story to tell of someone being put into this position where they have been painted as someone who's evil or wicked, and then how do they react to that? So I think that she really knocks it out of the park, and I think the interplay between Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande is obviously one of the strengths of this film, because Ariana Grande is the exact what you expect out of a loud, boisterous, flamboyant musical personality, and that's what she was called to do. I like her less than I like Cynthia Erivo, but it's she couldn't have done any different. Like I couldn't have expected any different.
The character of Glinda, or Galinda, as she's called for a good portion of this part of the story, is exactly that. I mean, it is originated on stage by Kristen Chenoweth, who is typecast in musicals and TV and movies as like folksy, bubbly, ditzy character, and that is exactly what Glinda is, and that's what Ariana Grande was called in to do. I think you're exactly right. What really surprised me is how well the audience responded to her. I mean, I think she is very funny in this. People of our generation obviously will know Ariana Grande from her music, but as a performer, her most popular role is on a Nickelodeon show called Victorious, where she's essentially playing this same character. She is the dumb comedic relief character who doesn't understand things or has weird folksy or inexplicable like comments made about any situation. And Glinda is a little bit more, popular girl, wants everyone to like her, doesn't really understand the scope of the world outside of her point of view, and her character arc relates directly to that. So it's not like Grande doesn't have any subtlety to work with in this film. But my audience especially, I don't know, did you see it in like a full theater, Tucker?
No, not I saw it like at 2 p.m.
Oh, sure. Okay.
on a weekday, so no.
Okay. I went to a Wednesday night fan screening of this that was packed full, and the audience was eating up every single comedy moment that Grande had. And it really surprised me, and probably lent to my response to her performance as well. I think she is very good in this, and
yeah, no, she's
again, well known, well regarded for her vocal range, and does a great job here. Not only in the technical aspect, but in the performance of doing these things on screen. I mean, my favorite song from Wicked has always been Popular, and so I had some expectation of her performance going into the rendition of it here, and what she adds to it, I think, is pretty admirable. I mean, she throws in some extra moments that aren't necessarily in like the recording or the original Broadway rendition or whatever. I think she kind of makes this role her own in a way that Erivo does as well, but is much more challenging for the character of Glinda because there's a lot less range to work with, maybe.
Yeah, that's definitely true, and I think that less range is maybe what contributes to me connecting to the character less, or connecting to the performance less, because she isn't given as much of the like humanity and like grounded characterization that Elphaba does. Her struggles are very surface level. Her goals are also very surface level, and it's the intent of the character. But I do think that for the secondary lead of this film, and for someone who gets basically even screen time, and I don't know, maybe even more. I don't know the exact breakdown, but she's omnipresent, and I think I was expecting a little bit more characterization, a little bit more grounded humanity out of someone who is ostensibly lead of the film, and because she feels like the funny side character, but also you're watching like an entire movie.
She's there the entire time.
Yeah, and so I was like, I kept wanting there to be these moments, especially the moment when they're saying goodbye to Elphaba on the train station, and they're like having a moment where they're talking to each other about how I can't remember the prince, but the prince, I can't remember his name, but
Fiero.
Yeah, I'm gonna say the prince.
That's fair.
She's like, he's been kind of distant. I don't really understand this, and I'm like, okay, honestly, this is like the first time we're seeing them have like a genuine interpersonal conversation, but previous to that, it had been like them dancing together, and that's like, okay, that's how they bond, and then there's the whole popular song, but that's like, it's a musical number, it's not really a human conversation. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, so here's like, they're like friends, she's confiding in Elphaba, and they're gonna have a conversation, but then she's just like, oh, but I love him, I loved him, and I want him, and I love him, and I'm like, like a missed opportunity. But I think we could see some of that in the second part. I don't really know. But I was a little bit disappointed by she's operating within a limited range, and the limited range is on the high energy side, and there's not a lot of underneath all that. She's actually a real person with real struggles.
So here's what I want to say about that, and this gets into the notion of like adaptation generally, but I'm gonna relate it directly to this film, and the runtime in the pacing is something I want to talk about in this as well. So the original Broadway production of Wicked is 3 hours long.
This movie almost 3 hours long.
Exactly. The first act of that is an hour and a half. This first act of the same story, is 2 hours and 40 minutes with credit. Yeah. Probably like 2 hours 35 or something. Yeah. So you're adding an extra hour of runtime to what is effectively the same events, same songs, and you end in the same place. And so many are questioning, where does this extra runtime come from? I think a lot of it is attributed to just the slower pacing of a film as compared to a Broadway musical. Again, I talked about how you have time for your actors to emote with their faces instead of having to move through dialogue quickly. But at the same time, I don't think it's all of that. I think at the same time there is a bit of a pacing issue, especially as we get into the third act, because if you're going in knowing that you're going to be adding a full hour to this, maybe use that hour to, depart from the musical at least a little bit in terms of improving our character dynamic.
Yeah.
The one thing that jumps out to me is, After Popular, my favorite song, and I think one of the better musical moments in the film.
Yeah.
We move directly into them going to the classroom and the lion cub of the cage, and then she makes everyone in the classroom pass out with the poppies,
Yeah.
and then we get another song with Elphaba and Fiyero, and I'm like, well, shouldn't we get a scene where like maybe she does try to make her popular?
Yeah.
In a way, other than the only segment of that, which is like kind of their renewed relationship as it moves into a second phase now, is like the hair flip moment, which is more of a joke than anything else.
Sure. Yeah.
There is not
And
a
also, what? 10 seconds, if
exactly. There is not a meaningful moment built after Popular until they're like, and now we're in the Emerald City and we're going to meet the wizard and yada yada yada. And now it's the end of the movie and the curtain has been pulled back literally and the reveal at the end of the movie. I'm like, there's not time for me to get to know the relationship between Elphaba and Glinda as it is, at post them understanding one another.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also think that, to me, the fact that this is such a long movie, and while I understand just generally the storytelling trope of enemies to lovers or friends sort of thing, I do feel like the dance sequence in which they come to sort of appreciate each other, because Glinda and Elphaba dance like unconcerned with what the rest of the group thinks of them, that into Popular, because those scenes are basically back to back, I don't think provides enough for me to feel like there's a genuine connection between the two of them. I like the sort of slow, introspective, like not saying it but seeing eye to eye, like I understand you moment that the dance sequence is. It's a very slow scene. I think a large chunk of the runtime comes from that scene alone. But I like that conceptually. But I do think that into Popular, which is like something that you would do, like Glinda's just immediately treating Elphaba like her best friend, and they're like, it's a high octane, and Elphaba's like only a little bit put off by it, not completely. It's like this just feels like a hard smash cut of like, now they're friends. And then after that point, they're on each other's arm the entire time. They're confiding in one another. They're on an adventure together. And I'm like, you had 2 hours and 40 minutes. Like, I wanted these two to like feel like real friends and not just like, oh, the plot says they're friends now, and so they're friends now.
Tucker, the dance moment I think you're talking about is a perfect encapsulation of this, because that is a moment that exists in the original musical, and so as a director, as a writer, whatever, you're like, well, I have to put that moment in here, and if you are averse to adding anything else, you obviously identify that as the moment where it's like, okay, we have to spend time here and convey through our performances that these characters understand each other and come to know each other on a really core level here, which is why we spend so much time in that scene and why we have to really convey the intimacy of that moment. Because outside of that, in Popular, that's when we're just meant to understand that they are like deep, almost inseparable friends now. And it would only take something earth-shatteringly worldview changing to get them to separate now, which is the end of the movie. And I think that's exactly what we're talking about. Is that
and I think also to that point, though, the fact that the end of the movie comes so quickly after all of this stuff has happened, and I am not sold on their like interpersonal dynamic, because I feel like those scenes are tonally disparate and don't provide the sort of middle ground that I was looking for to really believe in their friendship. I also feel like I don't really get a ton of emotion out of the fact that they're being wedged apart. I mean, I understand it on a script writing level. I'm like, this is happening, but I'm like, to my eyes as a viewer, 30 minutes ago, you hated each other. And and then you had some like an intimate scene and then a funny scene, and now you're best friends. And that to me like doesn't feel like it's built up enough to feel really emotionally impacted by the fact that that relationship is coming to an end, or that like they're ideologically opposed at that point.
What I will say is that Wicked is a well-revered and very famous musical, but not exactly lauded as like the height of character writing. It is like, hey, this musical is really technically impressive and has some really great songs in it.
Yeah,
and that's about as far as, and obviously has Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth in it, with these great performances. With that being said, spoilers for Wicked.
Yeah.
Because, hey, those two people I just mentioned show up in this movie.
Oh, do they?
Yes.
I don't know what they look like.
So, Tucker, they go to the Emerald City, and, like, the two ladies that, like, come out and kind of do, like, the origins of the wizard kind of talk in that number.
Oh, yeah, they're doing, like,
Yes.
a little play, yeah.
That is the original Glinda and Elphaba.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any
Which,
thoughts
in
on
my
that?
theater, got, like, a round of applause.
Okay, yeah, I had no idea who they were.
Yeah.
Because the filmmaking does be like, it does make me think like, oh, these are like, these are people.
Yeah.
I thought for a second like, oh, I should look that up after, then I totally forgot about it.
Yeah.
So okay, now I know.
Yeah. Yes. And they have like an extended cameo essentially,
Yeah.
and there's even a fun little moment where like Ariana Grande starts to sing, and then Kristen Chenoweth takes over the singing instead. It's fun. It's kind of like an Avengers moment for theater kids. I can condone it. All right. But the Emerald City segment, because let's talk about the back half, or like the last act of this movie essentially, moves also very quickly.
Yeah.
And I think it's the worst part of the movie as well.
Yeah. I would agree.
Because and I want to talk about Jeff Goldblum because he plays the wizard here.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's especially good. I mean, they let him do some Goldblum-y stuff in terms of his performance.
Yeah.
And they gave him like a quick musical moment when he's like, I'm a sentimental man, and look at this thing that I'm doing, which I'm sure plays a lot better on the stage than it does in here, because it's like him behind a curtain with the moon or something.
Well, he's doing a great dictator thing. I'm like,
Yeah,
hey,
that's
that's
a
a
fair
reference
point.
to classic cinema. So
That's a good point. But then he's like, and it's because we have this knowledge of the wizard being a fake from the Wizard of Oz, obviously. But it feels like we're like rolling really quickly into them using Elphaba, and she's like, "Oh no, I made the wings, or the monkeys have wings now. Oh, you're trying to use me. You don't have any power. I'm getting chased by guards. I'm going into the hot air balloon. I'm flying around. It's defying gravity. End of the movie."
I agree, and I think that pacing thing, because I would not say I want this movie to be longer for this first half of the story. I would have reallocated some time resources away from the just constant and massive cast of side characters from the school and all the scenes they have together. You trim out one of those, and you give Glinda and Elphaba and the wizard one day to just exist
One
together.
short day in the Emerald City.
Well, fair enough, but one short goddamn scene I fucking guess, where they just exist together. Like they have a meal, talk a little bit more about her past, just share a more genuine moment, because I do think that it's such a hard cut between showing up, being all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and totally bought into the glamour of the Emerald City, and then oh, this is so cool, I can do a spell, it's the Grimmer, this is sick as hell, and then but the monkey's in pain. That must mean everything's fake.
Everything's a lie.
And I'm like, all right, okay. I know that the movie has, well, actually, still kind of has quite a bit left at that point.
That segment where they're like running, and then the monkey's in the hallway, and the hot air balloon, and then they're like, we're gonna do defying gravity. You hear that defying gravity sort of theme? We're gonna do it.
Yeah, that last sequence is very long, and so I understand that we're like gearing towards that quickly. But it doesn't. Again, another reason why I wasn't emotionally impacted by this movie is I didn't feel like I don't think the wizard was particularly well established. I mean, I understand from like a just cultural level of like, okay, we get it. We know the thing about the wizard, and they certainly reference him enough in the first part of the movie to be like, okay, it's an important cultural figure, even in the world of Oz, obviously. But as a character, the big mechanical face, to the Jeff Goldblum coming out, to the song, to the Michelle Yeoh showing up, like, this is just all happening too fast. It's all in this one fucking empty room, and I'm like, none of this feels real. And that to me is the biggest crime of Wicked, is I wasn't able to be bought into the stakes of this movie, to the plight of the characters, which I think was interesting on a conceptual level, but in execution, I feel like the movie is more concerned with having funny animated animals and sparkly things and people dressed up in goofy costumes than it is exploring an interesting character, which I think is, in my mind, that's what Wicked is about. Is like,
yes,
that's an interesting story to tell about an interesting character. But just to quickly posit my biggest issue with this movie on like a very personal level is I really think that the production design, it's good. I'm not insulting it, but I don't like it myself because it feels like a theme park. It feels like the fake, like it's like a plastic rock outside in someone's like yard where they hide the key or whatever. Like that's not a real rock. Like you go to a theme park and you're like, it's a facade of a shop, or the lights and the plants don't look quite right because they're built to sit there for 40 years, and I'm like. Oz doesn't feel like a place. It feels like
Tucker,
a facade, which I
agree.
guess might be like thematically intentional, but like it just meant that I was like looking at all these sets that I'm like, okay, they built these. These are like, it's impressive that they built these, but I don't believe in them.
Yeah, I think it has to do a lot with how this film looks too, and people have sort of thrown jabs at John M. Chu as a director, and saying that he doesn't have the wherewithal, the juice to do like a big, long, epic musical like this. And I thought like In the Heights was good enough, but obviously that is far more grounded than something like this.
I was like, oh man, because he also did Crazy Rotations. I'm like, oh man, crazy that he jumped from Crazy Rotations to this.
Yeah.
Nope, I saw In the Heights in theaters.
That's right. But much has been said about how this film looks, and I agree with like the people who are dogging on it. I mean, you are effectively doing a cinematic follow-up to The Wizard of Oz, the Technicolor movie of all time.
Yeah.
And this entire movie just looks washed out to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, I think the color grading is fine, and it is a colorful movie. It just not in comparison to The Wizard of Oz, which I certainly understand.
But like, there's it's the one that really stuck out to me is when we're doing like The Wizard and I, and she is closing out the number. She is running across the wheat field or whatever, and like it's all white. Like the wheat is all white, and I'm like, what? Give me some rich golden fields of grain here, juxtaposed against the green and like the brown of the college behind her, and then like the white sands of the desert in front of her. Like the desert and the wheat looks the exact same color, and I think there's a lot of moments like that. Like in the closing of Popular, the entire movie gets like a pink tint to it, and then we go back to the regular look of the movie, and I'm like, well, you had like some color tonation just for a moment there.
Yeah, I didn't like that pink tint. I'm like, why? What is this conveying? I have no idea.
Well, I think it's mostly just meant to be like you're kind of seeing like effectively Glinda's perspective on the world, where everything's pinky and nice and sweet and frilly. But like, what I meant is that like we put some color tonation on the movie, and then we take it away. I'm like, ooh, this it looked washed out to me.
That's fair enough. I mean, it's certainly, that is the most aggressively colorful element of the film, and to me, I think the reason why I'm like, okay, yeah, you're probably right that this is like, oh, this is how she sees the world, but that's also, number one, that's stupid, and number two, what it really means in actuality is they do Command B,
take the slider.
And they take the magenta slider up. And I'm like,
I'm not saying I wish the movie looked like that. I'm just saying like it's a juxtaposition thing for me. I was like, wow, this movie does not have like a sumptuous color palette to me.
Sure. Yeah.
Anyway,
but what do you think about my I guess criticism of the production design?
Yeah, I can get that. I mean, it certainly doesn't feel tactile to me. I think it leans maybe too heavily on its CGI elements, and then even like maybe VFXing over some of the real tactile production design can always give movies like that weird alienating sensation where it's like, I know I've seen behind the sets photos, I know this is a real set, but it also just looks indistinguishable from the VFX stuff, I guess because it has to. Like if it looked more real maybe, then the VFX would stand out against it. I'm not really sure.
Well, the
anyway.
effects are very good. This
Yeah.
is, again, it's not a cheap movie. All the animals, all the CGI characters, all the big spectacle moments, all the magic and stuff. It all looks very good. I'm not sold into the world, so I'm not like emotionally wowed by it. But I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm not going to criticize it in that way.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, kind of how I come down on the movie. I'm like, I have some criticisms with it on a like subjective level because I guess I wanted more of that character study out of it because I think the story is interesting on a conceptual level. I am not a musical guy, and I wasn't familiar with either the story or the song, so I wasn't like ready for some of this stuff, and it just kind of happens. And the production design is intentionally so, but it's plasticky. The world of Oz is fake. It's a toy box, and it keeps me from connecting to the world because I'm like, I just want to slam the like pop-up book closed.
That's fair. I have some things about that I want to talk about that are maybe more related to where the story is going to go.
Okay.
So if we want to do scores first, and because that is more like spoiler stuff for part 2.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna go a 6.4.
Yeah, I'll just say the same. I mean, I don't have particularly strong feelings with this movie. I think it's good, but it just doesn't really stick with me.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so again, I said spoilers already, but this is another like spoilery thing that will almost certainly be revealed. And I want to know if you clock this is another thing. So, Tucker, if I'm ruining a reveal in Wicked Part 2 for you, I'm sorry.
Tanner, I won't remember this in a year.
Okay, that's fair.
I don't remember this conversation in
so in the opening of this movie, when we're talking about Elphaba's like birth.
Is the wizard her dad?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, yeah,
right?
I clocked that. Yeah.
Okay.
Is that true to the musical? Or is it a new story?
I would presume so. I don't think
Oh, you don't know? Okay.
No, I have not seen Wicked the stage show.
Fake theater kid.
I know.
You didn't even do the fucking spark notes.
Yes. Regardless, I think if you're waiting to make that a reveal, this is not a real criticism. It's more just a funny thing that's like, hey, if the only thing you're gonna have that mysterious character do at the beginning of the movie is go like, oh ho ho, is maybe don't cast the actor who has the most distinctive oh ho ho of all time of all working actors, Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah,
and then of course his song is about how he wants to be parental, and I'm like, that's the thing. Because I also like kind of they brush over that part pretty quickly.
Yeah.
That her father,
the mayor or whatever,
something like that. He's not her real father. They mention that once and they don't really bring it up again. I think more than likely because no one knew except for presumably her mother and the wizard. Her mother died in childbirth or giving birth to her sister.
Yeah.
But I had like kind of forgotten about that because I'm like, it doesn't really feel like that important. But then when he's like, I just want to like have you around and I want to be parental and I'm a sentimental guy, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, gotcha.
Ding.
Other thing I want to talk about is the carrot dangly like Wizard of Oz reference moments, or when we're soloing with the Wizard of Oz, I'm like, this sucks. This is so hammy. I hate this. Like when Jeff Goldblum's like, what color should this road be?
Oh, that's so fucking annoying. Yeah.
And unfortunately, I'm not gonna list anything specific. Even though you said you won't remember this in a year, but that gets a lot worse in part 2. There's a lot more of that.
I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. But anyway.
We did it. We talked about Wicked Part 1. It's okay, but people are really enjoying it, and it's a good movie, all things considered. The performances are great. The production design is good. It's a well-made movie, and so I'm not complaining too much. So thank you very much, everyone, for watching this, I guess, more dour review of Wicked Part 1 than you're going to get from most people.
We went in a long time on how good the performances are. Yeah.
And then it kind of went downhill like the movie.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. So we'll see you guys next time. We'll see you guys in a year.